A reading from Luke chapter 9. Once, when Jesus was praying in private and his disciples were with him, he asked them, "Who do the crowds say I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others that one of the prophets of long ago has come back to life." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Peter answered, "God's Messiah." Jesus strictly warned them not to tell this to anyone. And he said, "The Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law. And he must be killed, and on the third day be raised to life." Then he said to them all, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for me will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit their very self? Whoever is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his glory, and in the glory of the Father and of the holy angels." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Look at the state of the world today. Fighting and hatred, natural disasters, failing politicians, and epidemics like the coronavirus, which is affecting all of our lives. It's not surprising that there is a crisis of faith too. Many people have lost interest, let alone faith, in an all-powerful, can-do-anything kind of God. Many have grown weary of seeing the pain of the world. We are constantly and rightly reminded of all of our histories of oppression, genocide, and even Holocaust. The many stabbings that have taken place across our country. Or maybe closer to home we think of our own pain and suffering and that of those we love. There have been some very sad times in the last few years for our congregation. Maybe it's any one of these thousands of tragedies, sorrows and bereavements that run through human life. Maybe the fear and uncertainty of this present time. The psalmist expresses this kind of feeling in Psalm 22. "O my God, I cry in the daytime, but you do not answer. By night as well, but I find no rest." So before we think about Good Friday, can we talk about Bad Friday? This is the Friday we all struggle with. How are we to make sense of a powerful, can-do-anything kind of God who seemingly chooses to do nothing at times? That is a Bad Friday question. Bad Friday is our personal story of suffering and loss, a day when it feels like your heart just can't break any more than it already has. The day a loved one dies. The day we feel that pain will never go away. The day the world comes to an end. The day we realise that we can do nothing about the suffering of a loved one. A day when we feel distant from God, even forsaken by him. Each of us, I'm sure, could describe the bad Fridays of our lives, and we always struggle to make sense of them, to understand them and find any meaning. The events we remember today can represent the pinnacle of that struggle. Today can hold all the bad Fridays of our lives. Where is God, and what is he doing? It can be hard to preach on Good Friday. It is the most challenging day of the church's year. We can sing and praise and somehow seem to glory in the cross of Christ. And this makes no earthly sense. Jesus suffered terribly and died. Are we glorying in the violence, the injustice and the pain of suffering and death? Do we say too easily that this is all God's plan? Do we mean that divine violence is somehow acceptable? There's no easy way round this. It is a tragic and difficult day. We don't like to linger here, and neither did Jesus' disciples. They fled. Peter denied he even knew him. Even Pilate tried to release Jesus and get away from this day. 3 times he declared, "I find no case against him." You know as well as I do, however, that we can never truly outrun or escape suffering in our own lives. There is no way out of it, except, like Jesus, to go through it. And this is where the argument gets stuck. It's hard to understand how an all-powerful God, who we know can do anything, should choose to do nothing. This all-powerful God, did he choose not to extinguish the ovens at Auschwitz? Does he choose not to deflect the knives on our streets? Does he choose to look the other way when a child is abused? Does this all-capable God simply refuse to intervene in yours and my tragedies and suffering? A God that looks the other way has no credibility. If that's what this Friday is about, then there is nothing good about it. We cannot glory in that kind of cross. So maybe the cross of Christ is there for another reason, to show us, if we have eyes to see, a completely different kind of God. Maybe the only God worthy of our belief is a vulnerable and powerless one who suffers with us. Isn't that what the name Emmanuel, God with us, is all about? Jesus is never more real, more human, more embodied, more identified with us frail and failing humans than he is on the cross. Not at his birth or in his teaching or preaching or in his miracles or even at the resurrection, but on the cross, in his suffering and dying, he resembles us now. In our suffering and dying, he can be present to us all. As we spend days perhaps of loneliness and isolation for the sake of our health, and many feel truly lonely, let's reflect on those words of Jesus. My God, why have you forsaken me? He felt the loneliness that sin brings into our lives as it destroys our relationships. He didn't deserve it, but in that moment he knew our isolation. And that is what is good about this Friday. It doesn't make the day easy or acceptable, but it's all we've got. It is the faithfulness of God to God's sinful people in life and in death, and therefore we can cling to and even glory in the cross of Christ. And if we do this, a personal response is necessary. In fact, it is commanded by the Lord himself. Take up your own cross each new day and walk with me. So let's take a little bit of time now to reflect and pray together. First, take time to reflect in your own heart on the glory, the mystery, and the wonder of the cross of Christ. And then reflect for a moment upon what your own cross looks like today. In this moment, let us each take up our own crosses in the name of Christ and go forwards wherever He leads us. The Lord be with you. Amen.